Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Really excited everyone can join us for the State of Campus Recruiting. We're going to let the Zoom populate. Guys, does anyone want to make bets on how long the average person has spent on Zoom while it's been populating?
Like in their lives or this year?
In their lives. Like you think
wow.
about taking like 2 minutes per webinar to populate, let everyone in.
So many hours. I'm not sure.
Okay. I wish I could catch the, or I wish I kept track of it. Although the math is probably crazy depressing. Let's see if we have.
I'm always the one that starts speaking and then the mute is on. And then I got to come back because someone said you're on mute. But I always say the most incredible thing during that time I'm on mute. So
Of course.
yeah,
You and me
earth
both.
shattering. Could write a book.
My wife wishes there was a mute button for me in real life where she can mute me. But she
Amen.
also would love to kick me out of the webinar in real life. I am just so fired up. Okay, it looks like it's still populating, but based upon our conversation as we were all preparing for this, I know we have a ton to get through. So let's kick this off. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. I am Jeffrey from Parker Dewey. Really excited that you can join us for what I know is going to be an incredible State of Campus Recruiting session. Before we get going, all of the normal stuff, feel free to use the chat with any questions, comments, etc., or the Q&A. We'll try to hit them as we go through and certainly try to hit some of the questions that have come up at the end or new questions that come up. Before introducing the panelists, I just want to share some quick data that I think will really help set the stage for today's discussion. We recently did our fall student sentiment survey, asking students, college students in particular and recent grads, their preferences about how to be recruited. It was something we started really during the COVID pandemic, and it found a lot of the trends haven't changed all that much since. And some of the data that I think is most relevant for today is, first of all, 64% of the students said they need more opportunities to build their skills in order to succeed in their internship or job search. So 64% are looking for those opportunities. 50% said they don't have enough skill building or professional experience on their resume to secure an opportunity, which is, again, really, really important, especially as we think not just about the students' perspectives, but also given the importance of skill assessment, as we'll talk about today, for employers. And then finally, another question we asked was about unpaid internships and unpaid skill building experiences, or as we like to say, unpaid internships in disguise. 60%, actually over 60% of college students said that unpaid opportunities, whether it's couched as skill building, internships, experiences, or whatever, are either unfair or hurt their opinion of the company. So beyond the fact that unpaid internships, we know, limit opportunity, and we've seen all the data from NACE and others, students are saying it negatively impacts their view of the company and the brand. A couple other things to just quickly highlight. 60% of companies said they're more likely to find a successful hire when they're using skills as opposed to just relying on academic pedigree. And 87% of companies say they have a skills gap or expect to find one. So again, we're going to hit on these topics today with this expert panel, and I am going to try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible since these are all the experts. So real quickly to introduce the panelists, you can read their bios online, so we're not going to burn a bunch of cycles, but briefly, Asha's joining us. She literally wrote the book on skills-based hiring with her book, Skills, the Common Denominator. Strongly suggest everyone get a copy of it. I was blown away by it the first time I read it. Sean, who leads employer engagement at ThriveDX, formerly known as HackerU, which was one of the first boot camps out there. So excited to get his perspective. And Roy, who leads talent acquisition for Spirit Aerosystems out of Kansas. So really excited about what I know is going to be an incredible session. So with that, let's kick this off. And let's start really with Asha to help set the stage. What is skills-based hiring?
Sure, Jeff. So skills-based hiring is when the employer actually changes the prerequisite criteria of a role. And this could be whether that removing the degree requirements or the years of experience. So it allows non-traditional candidates to feel encouraged to apply for the opening. And I think when you can contrast that with more traditional approaches to hiring, the job description criteria is really like a wish list from a manager. And so, the interview evaluation criteria can also be like a wish list. And so you may have selection bias, if candidates progress through an interview and you're judging them solely based on their education or other related credentials.
But one thing to clarify when we talk about this is, does this mean that students or learners don't need to go to college anymore? I mean, that's obviously a hot topic out there.
I think there are different paths for different people. And so if you're on a path where higher education is important to you, and there are skills that you're learning while you're pursuing a higher education credential that you can take into the workplace, sure, continue with that path. But if you're a non-traditional candidate who hasn't had the opportunity for higher education, you should no longer be excluded from applying from roles where you've learned those skills in other places and you can bring them into a formal workplace.
No, thanks for clarifying that. Sean, let's go over to you. What are you hearing from the employers themselves around their desire to do skills-based hiring?
Yeah, so no, excited to be here. And just to kind of echo a little bit on what Asha said, is people have so many more options than they ever did before. And we have a population of folks that were graduating in the early 2000s that are now having kids. And they're looking at it going, hey, I'm strapped with all this student loan debt. There are other options, not to diminish universities, but I think we're looking at a student that's coming up and is being more choosy in how they can, as a consumer, because at the end of the day, they have different options. And I think it's a great thing that there's competition and options out there, because I think it makes the whole market really look at their deliverability method and say, how can we ensure that we're making our folks as employable as possible, as well as providing them the experience that they want, because each one of those options has a different experience. So no, super happy to kind of talk on this topic. And we spend so much time, Thrive DX, we have different universities that we partner with to run our boot camps in different regions across the country. So it does look different as we look at the size of employers, the type of employers, the popularity. Also, what do their recruiting processes look like, as well as what does leadership and hiring managers look for? But as we look at it and we say, okay, we know in the 2010s, we started to see a big, looking at the Harvard Business Review, it's a great article that I love to read, but it talks about how corporations really said, we need to look at the college degree requirement. And is it something that we really need for every single role? And I would say that as we look, 10 years later, as we go through, there are some companies that have made some really great progress. We work with some companies who have looked at, instead of degree requirement, they look at total experience in education. So instead of saying you need a 4-year degree, you may need a 2-year degree. Maybe you need a boot camp plus a year of experience or two. So I think there are corporations that are out there that are doing that. And then there are some that just don't have the means or the staff to really take the time and do it right. So they need to rely on third parties or partners to help them come to that. And that's how we try to work with these employers on being a guide and being a resource and being in a lot of ways, a job role and a job description consultant, because we can help them. And there's that ecosystem to do that. But there is still a long way to go, because there are so many core skills that are out there. And when we talk to employers, they're not telling us the technical skills they're looking for. They're saying we're looking for someone with drive, with problem solving, critical thinking. We're looking with somebody who can be persistent and a learner, someone who's curious. Those are all skills that can be developed in many different ways through different experiences. And we teach our students that come through that you can't just do the bare minimum, right? You're going to do the technical curriculum, but you also need to look at and do the extra, a passion item. Are you building a lab in your home? Are you utilizing GitHub for portfolios? Are you doing hackathons? Are you going out there? Employers want to see the passion, because they want to know if they are going to invest in this person that maybe doesn't have the education, they want to know that they have those skill sets and that passion to keep learning, so that that investment will pay off.
Now, first of all, I'm so happy that you brought up the fact that skills go beyond the technical ones. They include those core skills, the passion, the teamwork, the ability to learn, the problem solving, communication, et cetera. and again, I love that you highlighted that, because all too often I think skills-based hiring initiatives forget that part. But something you brought up that I really want Roy's perspective on is you talked about while recruiters or HR teams may be thinking about skills-based hiring, sometimes it's difficult to get the hiring managers on board when they're still relying on academic pedigree. Roy, I see you nodding, and given your role at Spirit, I mean, what are you finding from the hiring managers?
Yes, no, this is such a great conversation. And thanks for having me. And by the way, we're Spirit Aerosystems, a tier 1 aerostructures company, because I know people get confused us with the airline. So we are based in Wichita, Kansas, but absolutely. So when it comes to those hiring managers, really trying to get them to buy in to this switch, right? That is a little different and sometimes can be challenging for corporate America to maybe wrap its head around. But fortunately, at Spirit Aerosystems, the company that I work at, we've seen some of these shifts and changes. We removed the 3.0 GPA requirement that we had in place, not only for interns, but also for full-time employees. It still serves as a guidance, but it is not the firm requirement. And so that just opens up the door to so many other students, potential candidates, that sort of thing. And then having those conversations with the managers and the management teams, one, to build that trust, but also to explain some of those core competencies that were just mentioned by Sean, that it's important. Yes, you could have that 4.0 student, or you could have that, expert technical, excellent, person who's not able to work in a team, who's not able to provide value with motivation, with inspiration. And that really, over a long period of time, can do a lot of damage to a team, to the goals that you're trying to reach. And so we've really seen it, hand in hand. We, in certain roles at Spirit Aerosystems, we need you to have that aerospace engineering degree if you're going to be a stress analysis engineer, right? You got to have that technical knowledge. But we're also looking for, and I talk to students all the time, new fresh graduates or folks who are out in the industry, and a lot of times they're asking me questions of, what are your teams looking for? What are your managers looking for? And I'm always communicating, we want to know that you have that technical knowledge, but now in the context of where we are in society and in industry, we really want to also see those core competencies of things as simple as kindness, right? Kindness, creativity, drive, passion, all the things that Sean mentioned. And so I'm communicating that to those candidates, but also hearing that feedback from managers as well. And so one of the things that, if I may, Jeff, is just share what we're talking about today in the sense of skills versus your degree, right? So I worked in industry as an aerospace engineer, structural design engineer for 6 years at Spirit Aerosystems. And then in May of 2021, I pivoted to HR. Roy does not have an HR degree, right? But what happened
We won't
is,
tell.
over the time, I was working with the college internship program. I was serving at different career fairs. I was getting that exposure, putting that work in, all of that. And that ended up being the delineator, right? When the HR team had to make the decision, and they bet on me, which I'm so grateful for. But over this, year and a half or so, I've been able to, those skills are really coming forward, and it really has been making an impact with the team. Yes, I'm tooting my horn a little bit, but I'm just such a good case study of what we're talking about on this meeting.
But this is so important, because again, part of the trick is, how do you help the college student, whether it's in a boot camp, community college 4-year, do that exploration before they go and take that full-time job, or even before they graduate? And Sean, I see you chomping at the bit.
Sorry. I mean, Roy said something that's just amazing. And what we see in the field is many organizations also have their pipeline of talent right in front of them that they don't realize. And we talk about skills gap, but there's also a pipeline gap. And how are you making it accessible? And we talk to a lot of companies that are not just looking to bring in new talent, but they're looking to upskill and reskill certain talent. And who better than a lot of the folks that are in those organizations? So whether they're coming in and working at that entry-level position, or they're coming in as an intern or a contract role, there are so many ways that these people can stand out, especially if there are developmental programs within that organization that says, hey, people like you with your skill sets also do really well in this field. So we talk about transferable skills a ton. And I think that's where we look at in this world, especially post-pandemic, with the great resignation and people leaving the workforce, there are different ways to pipeline your talent than, let's say, the traditional ways that they've done it in the past.
Well, and I want to build upon that and go to Asha, because again, with both of those comments, what are the top skills that you're hearing that employers are really looking for? I mean, both at the entry level, but also in professionals throughout their careers.
That's such a great question, Jeff. And I think you're just thinking about, let's just start with entry level roles. They all require, no matter where they are, the common skills of like customer service, customer first mentality, determination on the employee's part, and basic writing skills. And so when you think about traditional recruiting methods, especially like on-campus recruiting, it's really limited to who can attend a career fair on a specific day or time, and so if an employer can open up their recruiting options to consider virtual or hybrid options, assessments, or revamping the evaluation criteria, that open mind will allow more candidates with transferable skills to apply and consider their work environments. And so just a couple examples that I can share here is, even during an internship, employers can, evaluate candidates based on how they're adjusting to hybrid culture, how they're tackling the tasks, the projects at hand, or building relationships with other interns and employees. And some interns may enjoy the culture and the flexibility that they're getting in that environment and want to return to the company. So employers really need to keep a pulse on candidates like that who are willing to return and take a full-time role. During an interview process, recruiters or hiring managers, when they're reviewing resumes for their open roles, they can look for skills like dependability when they see that a candidate has progressed in their responsibilities in their current company or even in school with student life. They can see if they're well-rounded, having extracurricular activities that allow for skills like collaboration and just continuous learning. I think that's something that we all look for when we're looking at candidates. So just a few examples there of just like hard skills, soft skills, life skills, job skills that come up in the day-to-day, the experiential of on-the-job training that we can leverage and bring into our work environments.
But a lot of the things that you brought up, though, are really things that a company sees once they've already made the selection for the internship or the new hire. How are companies really assessing those skills beforehand?
So we have, different ways of doing that. So we have companies, some are using assessments, especially if they have a really large funnel of candidates and they're trying to bring it down to the ones they want to bring in for an interview. So that's one option, is assessments. Another one is, exercises that show the candidate's skill and if they're able to handle a task at hand. But I think really the candidate needs to be able to identify their own skills by taking a skills inventory of their own and then being able to articulate how they're using those skills by using real life examples. And I have some of those in my book, Skills, the Common Denominator, to be able to help people to identify the skills and articulate them and understand the next steps that they can do.
Yet another reason to buy the book. But you said something that I know I take issue with: assessment.
All right.
I spend, and again, sorry to go off topic a bit, but I spent about a number of years at Educational Testing Service where we looked at assessment. I mean, that was all we did in this question of, can we use assessment to help employers level the playing field in campus recruiting and do so in a way that even improves the hiring outcomes? And the short version is, doesn't work. The assessments don't work. I mean, even if you can get through the fairness and the validity questions, doesn't really predict that when Accenture is looking to make an entry-level associate hire, what they need for team A versus team B is materially different. And tuning those assessments for the specific teams and specific individuals, plus you also need to have some of the real politic within the companies where hiring managers may not believe the assessment or may still rely on academic pedigree. And Sean, you look like you want to jump in with something. So I'm going to stop talking and get off my soapbox.
I think it's a double-edged sword, right? So yeah. Assessments are great. You look at huge organizations. I've worked in my past, whether it was at George Mason, Carnegie Mellon University, here at Thrive DX, you have different organizations with different needs. So if you have an organization, let's say some of the top Fortune 500, and you've got 8,000 candidates or applicants, right? You need to narrow that down in a certain way. I think assessments can be a great job of taking it from 6,000 to maybe 800, but it also depends on how they're setting up those assessments, and what partner or what vendor they're using to do that. Because if we look at some of the AI that's been out there, and we know that there's been legal troubles with that as well, Because if, let's say, you're doing your testing based off, let's say, performers out in the field of your current company, but they are a specific demographic, you've now made that assessment to bring in more people like the ones you have, which is actually going against what you're trying to do and bringing in more diverse talent. So it really depends on how you do it. And I think it is a very much a double-edged sword in how you do that.
Roy, you look like you wanted to add something.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with the double-edged sword thing, because there, it's all in context, at least for me and my experience here at Spirit Aerosystems, because there are, very real necessary reasons why you would have an assessment, at least in our company, in the context of, I'll just use structural analysis engineer position, right? Managers want to know, and the thing I like about these assessments is it's strictly a technical knowledge versus maybe some other core skills that you might be thinking about, but knowledge on how to draw free body diagrams, how to, solve, fundamental equations, whatever it is that you're needing for the role on conducting stress analysis on aircraft, right? That's important. We need you to know how to do that for that particular role. But on a broader spectrum, they can be harmful if, to that point that Sean was making, if they're designed to fit one, type of candidate, and then that's the candidate that you end up getting, or someone who's not as strong as taking tests. I mean, we don't even have to talk about, companies, but just in school, right? Someone who really shines as a student in tactical and applicable things that they get to do, maybe hands-on versus actually taking a standardized test. So I think you do have to be, I see somebody in the chat saying they have anxiety, right? Talking about the standardized test. You do have to have some, context and, some tact in how those are deployed. I do like how we are using those at Spirit in regards to like those technical skills for those roles that are really needed. You have to know that information. We got to keep these planes safe. You can't pull a plane over at 30,000 feet, right? But at the same time, really relying on interviews and our internship program, other experiences like that to try to get more. We had a team interview yesterday for a candidate in our HR team. And so it's just an opportunity to not just a one-on-one, but a whole team to kind of get that feel of whether that candidate would be a good fit or not. And so those are some of the things that we're doing here at Spirit.
Roy,
I think, oh, go ahead, Sean.
So I just, when we look at this too, it's not very much different than what the admissions was like to many of the top universities in the country. When you look at, some people are not great with the SAT, so you have to look at GPA, or you have to look at some of the others. And you have some schools that have moved to a very interview-based model as well. But looking holistically, and I agree with you, if you are utilizing your assessment in conjunction with those other factors, you get a more 360 view of the candidate rather than a yes or no.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think there was a comment in the chat that when we talk about assessment, I think a lot of what's being brought up now is the multiple choice or online, like take this and we're going to figure out if you're a leader or team player, which is, I think, for the purpose of this part of the conversation, yes, what we were talking about and highlighting the issues. But the reality is there's other ways to assess. And back to Sean's point, I mean, we work with a company right now that uses these micro internships as the assessment and as this way to get this whole pool of candidates. Let's, over the course of the year, have our hiring managers work with college students on these short-term projects. And now all of a sudden we have a pool of 100 or 1,000 or several thousand students who have already done projects for us. And we've already gotten feedback, not by how well someone takes a test, but how well do they communicate when they're doing a project for Sean? How well do they demonstrate their hard skills when they're doing an analysis for Roy or social media project for Asha? Like, that's an assessment too. What we're talking about is reframing the assessment and thinking about how to make it scalable.
And I see it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just want to say, I love that example because, I'm going to challenge the employers on the phone today. If you were to look back at this year at the positions that went unfilled, and you were to break down those positions into projects that needed to be done for next year, you could get students to come in and complete those projects and evaluate them at the same time and potentially fill those roles with those students when they graduate. And I think it's just an incredible opportunity to take advantage of a situation that you may be dealing with in the workplace and turn it into an opportunity to bring in more people with qualified skills to get the work done.
Asha,
And
that's a
hiring
great
managers.
challenge.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm
Well, I was
done.
gonna say that's a great challenge, and that's something that our team spends a lot of time in, especially when you look at we talk about the pipeline, the skills gap. There's so many mid-level, or I'm gonna put the quotations of entry level because everybody has a different the definition of what entry level really means. But they'll have these middle positions open or these mid-level positions open for a year, half a year, where you could have broken that position down into 2 or 3 people, taken responsibilities away from. And now maybe you're paying less money, less responsibility, but you're able to fill that. And I think that's a great challenge. And I'm gonna one up the challenge on top of that, Asha. Also look at your pipeline and your pathways of your positions.
Yes.
So what do you need to do, and what are the skills that you need to get to those next roles, so that you can see, could I actually take this role and make a pipeline or a feeder role into that?
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak to the chat. I'm a chat person. Like, I love seeing comments and like acknowledging the folks. So S Mitchell 8 something something was the number. I know the question was already answered, but your direct question was, are there micro internships within HR, human resources? Well, happy to represent on the call and have.
By the way, wait. I haven't set anyone up. I said this is not a Parker Dewey
I know, but we're on
advertisement.
Parker Dewey. I mean, we got to at least give you. I'm just trying to answer a question,
I
Jeff.
appreciate it.
So, I did have an opportunity. Spirit Aerosystems, we did a pilot with a Parker Dewey micro intern. And just to give, because not just that, a commercial, but to showcase how it was used, how the student was applied. We went out to over 18 different colleges. It's probably the most amount of, because we try to stick to the Midwest. We're in Wichita, Kansas is our headquarters. So we try to stay where we know students are going to, have a chance to want to stay in the Midwest. And so we needed to have, QR codes updated for positions that were, available. And then also I really wanted to touch base with National Society of Black Engineers chapters, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers chapters, Society of Women Engineers chapters at these different core universities that we already go to try to send an invite to now have their information to contact for further engagement. And so we had a micro intern develop that. So I was able to have the QR codes that were used by all the teams that I managed to go out to those universities. And then also I was able to send out email blasts to all of those different chapters to let them know, hey, we're coming, we can't wait to see you, and try to engage with them throughout the rest of this academic school year. So just an example for S. Mitchell, who is in the comments of that question. And so we're actually looking to, Roy has to go review the applications, but to select another micro intern to kind of help us with our housing, that information we send out to our summer interns and getting that all updated. So those are just some examples of how they've been, being used at Spirit Aerosystems. And to Asha's point and Sean's point, I mean, micro internship, co-op. Yes, I mean, we say that at Spirit all the time. When we have our summer interns, that's a 3-month interview. We always say that to our interns. That's a 3-month interview. That's an opportunity to showcase not just what you said in your interview over the phone, but can you actually work in that team? Can you deliver results? Are you then offered a second internship, third internship, or full-time opportunity? And that all comes out of that experience-based application, right? Interview that we're getting to experience throughout the summer.
Well, you brought up a really important point, because none of these things are mutually exclusive. I mean, one of the college students said to me a few years ago, and it was less creepy when she said it versus a 40-something married guy, but she said micro internships are like going on a date. She said, because otherwise I'm being forced to jump right into the engagement of the summer internship or co-op or apprenticeship or the marriage of the full-time role. Those are still both very, very important, but I want more opportunity to explore beforehand. Or for the student who's from Wichita but goes to school in Boston, well, here's a way of learning what opportunities exist at Spirit beyond just for engineering students.
And I think also, if you look at the non-traditional student that maybe is a single mom that has kids that's working their current job while taking a class at night, that micro internship can provide the flexibility to get some experience without maybe going through a 3-month summer internship because they need benefits at their current job. So I think that's another way that micro internships provide a lot of benefits for diverse folks in different situations too.
Well, and I want to get back, Sean, to more about Thrive's program, because again, we went off a little bit on a tangent there, which was a great discussion, but how is Thrive working to help students really develop those skills, and not just develop them, but to something Asha brought up earlier, communicate them effectively to the employers?
So amazing. So one of the things that, and for a lot of the career services folks on here, it looks very similar. My background is career services at multiple traditional universities, and my colleagues are from all different walks of life, whether it's recruiting, whether it's for-profit, boot camp operations, but we've somewhat merged a bit of all of those fields. So we do have a traditional career services, career outcomes team where we have an employer engagement, we have career curriculum that's proprietary to our unit, and then we also have career events similar to many of our career services, and then we also have career coaching. So it looks very similar to your traditional, and we partner with so many universities across the country, so it's very familiar for when they're partnering with us. So when that happens, we're not just teaching them and giving them a fish, we're actually teaching them to fish. So the way it works is our coaching, our career events, our curriculum team, they are the ones teaching them to fish, because we want them to have a skill for a lifetime. Especially, we're trying to understand, we're dealing with a different population of student. You know, these people are 25 plus years old. They have maybe a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree or another trade. You know, the majority of our students are career transitioners or transformers. They're coming here, they're taking they're working during the day, and they're taking our classes at night. So this is a very determined student, and it's a different type of student. But again, a great student in the sense of they have some of that customer service skills that Asha talked about earlier. A lot of them are coming from hospitality, they're coming from restaurants, some of them are coming from finance, from manufacturing. They have great skills. And if you look at that like an iceberg, you know, you're going to see the tip, but they have so many of those skills we talked about earlier. So what we're trying to do is pull that and help them understand, yes, this is a new skill you're learning, and you're going to have a practical hands-on learn, see, do. And what we're doing, because our team is functioned the way we are, we're going out to the employer community directly, and we're saying, what is in need of the field right now? So from the technical side, we're trying, and we have the agility to do this because of our size and the way we're set up. We can ensure the curriculum matches what employers are looking for, but we're also bringing in so many guest speakers. Our coaches are working with our students on branding, on those things of how do you talk about problem solving? How do you talk about critical skills in the roles that you had? Because they may not be able to do a full internship before going in, where maybe a traditional student could do that summer, or maybe multiple internships in 4 years. Our students have 10 months, 400 hours. So the micro internship aspect has been a great opportunity for us because of the reason I said before. It gives our students the ability to get that experience side on top of whatever else they're doing in their life. The other part is we're saying, and I think I mentioned it before, is you can't just do the bare minimum. You have to be reading, doing podcasts. You have to stay up to date, especially in software development and cybersecurity. It changes constantly.
Mhm.
So the employers, they want to know, what are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you watching? What have you done on your own? Have you helped somebody else with a problem at their company? They want to see those things. So that's what we're doing in skill development. And we're making sure that as advocates to the employer community, they know this population exists.
And I love that you brought up, I mean, the example of learning new technologies, part of it is staying up to date with new technologies, but it's also a great signal of one's ability to learn and take ownership. And Asha, I want to kick this over to you for a second, because a lot of what you talk about in your book and overall is about the individual. It's the
Yes.
individual taking ownership for his or her skill development.
Absolutely. No, we're in the driver's seat of our careers. And so we have to be able to identify the skills that we have, like I mentioned earlier, and then articulate them to employers. And I was just thinking back to our conversation about assessments. You know, if you don't think you're going to, score well on an assessment, you want to be able to negotiate that with a potential recruiter and say, hey, I don't think I'm going to score well on this, but I want to give you examples of where I've excelled in delivering what you need to get this job done. And so that, again, having the reference points, seeing examples of how other people have managed to succeed in their careers using their skills will help more and more people feel confident articulating their own skills. And I just want to chime in on what Sean was saying about the employers. Like, if an employer can weigh the benefits of bringing a candidate that's proficient in the core aspects of a job, but needs some upskilling on a technical platform, like that's way easier. It's way easier to teach the hard skills, like learning a technology platform, than maybe improving someone's soft skills off the bat.
I love that you brought that up because it reminds me, I started my career in investment banking and I was a finance major. And the investment banks and the consulting firms had this figured out for decades because I was one of very few finance majors. Everyone else was a liberal arts major. They were history and poli sci, and I thought I was going to have it nailed. But part of the reason the banks and the consulting firms do that is they realize those students have those core skills. It's easy to teach finance. It's easy to teach Excel, but it's a lot harder to teach things like, again, problem solving. That takes years and years and years.
Exactly.
By the way, since we're on the second half of this now, please, everyone who is listening in or watching, please feel free to use the Q&A if you have questions that you want to make sure that we answer. We're going to start doing that a little more actively in a bit. But one of the questions that came up already in the chat, and I want to make sure to hit, and I'll start with Roy, is what's the impact of on diversity with this shift? Are we seeing skills-based hiring supporting diversity initiatives within companies, and if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and it's a two-pronged approach, but to answer that question, I think that was by Eric. But absolutely, I think, removing the GPA requirement that I mentioned earlier has been a really great add. If you're a non-traditional student, or if you had a rough freshman year, or if you're trying to support yourself through college and working multiple jobs, that can all impact that number, that one number that's supposed to define your whole life, right? And so it just kind of breaks down those barriers. And so for non-traditional students or first generation students like myself, having those opportunities to be seen, to actually have a chance, doesn't mean that you're given the job right away or given that opportunity right away, but you do have a chance, you do have an at-bat. And so to Sean's point and Asha's point, then it's about helping that individual have all the skills when they do get that at-bat, helping them have all of that training, that coaching from a Thrive DX to be able to hit that ball out the park. And so, yeah, I think, leaning towards that direction definitely helps with your ethnically, diverse, racially diverse candidates. But I guess the second prong to it that I kind of think leans even more into the question that you asked, Eric, is, how do you, I think the question was, how do you hire diverse candidates, and how are you asking them to come to a company when no one looks like them at the company, right? Or very few people. I think it's such a great question. I'm Black, Puerto Rican, and Mexican. And so, of course, being in corporate America, having that experience myself. And so one of the things that I'm so grateful at Spirit Aerosystems is being in the seat that I'm in. I'm a firm believer of, right seat, right bus. And I feel like I've been on the right bus the entire time. But this is a seat of purpose for me. And so getting to really work to try to build that culture here. One of the examples that I'll give is we had a Latino candidate who was already in the industry, decided to come to Spirit Aerosystems in Wichita because his family was here and wanted to kind of come back to Wichita. And when he started, he was like, oh, I'm so excited to be back in Wichita. This other company I was at, they had a Latino EBRG, Employee Business Resource Group. Do you all have that here? And I was like, well, not at the moment. I call Spirit Aerosystems a teenager. So we're just shy of 17 years. We were Boeing back in before 2005. We switched to Spirit Aerosystems in 2005. So we're still growing. And so I said, would you be interested in helping us get that started? Because we need to champion that. He said, yeah. And so I'm excited to share that in September, Hispanic Heritage Month of this year, we were able to launch ALAS, which is our Latino EBRG. And so we're working on an African-American EBRG. And so as we are growing in this, as this teenager company, those are the things that matter, right? We're wanting to make sure that, yes, a lot of companies right now are like, we need diverse candidates, whether they're ethnically diverse or gender, whatever it is, we need to bring them in, right? But how are you going to keep those employees and not just keep them, and allow them to have a fulfilled experience that is going to, have them celebrating and wanting to bring other, friends of theirs, colleagues of theirs. And so one other quick story before I'll pass it on to someone else is we just re-engaged with our HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. When we were Boeing, we had strong relationships, but of course, through a divestiture and a change, some of those relationships die out. And so I've been in the seat to help restart those relationships, which is a huge passion of mine. And so we had 7 students from HBCUs in our internship program this past summer. And so one of the things we did is we said, hey, we got to make sure we introduce these students to our Black employees that are at Spirit Aerosystems, just to make sure, where do I go get my haircut? What church should I go to attend? All these different things, right? You're coming from a school, HBCU, where 99% of the students are Black, and you're coming to an industry where maybe it doesn't look like that. And so that was one of the steps that we took right at the beginning of the summer when they got here. And we're happy to say that 2 of those students who were eligible for full-time hire in January, they'll be starting in January. So 2 of those students. So it's just little things like that that really go a long way. So I'll get off my soapbox, but it is definitely something I'm passionate about. And I think it matters because companies a lot of times are just trying to get those candidates, not thinking about what else is needed to support them through the duration of their time at the company.
Roy, I love you hit on that, because my experience working with traditional college students as well as working with non-traditional, we have a socially conscious student that's coming through. They're looking at all other things and they can see through it. And one of the biggest things that I've heard students say is, as we've worked with many diversity groups and student groups in the past, is they need to walk the talk.
Yep.
Many of them, especially, I was a football player back in the day, and you'd be looking at the marketing of certain places and you'd be like, oh, they're representative. And then they get there and it's like, oh, the people that were diverse were in that marketing campaign, and those are the only people that were diverse here. And there's that switch. But one of the things that we look at as you talk about GPA is it also excludes such a huge part of the population, in the sense of, hey, not everybody has a GPA. If you're a certificate student, so let's say the schools that we partner with, at the end, they will get a professional certificate of completion that doesn't have a GPA attached. So that's one thing to look at. And then when you look at the 4-year degree requirement, if you look at 110, they're a great organization, and they say 76% of the Black American working population in America does not have a 4-year degree. So you automatically take them out. And then 83% of the Latinx community doesn't have. So now you're taking away a huge population of folks that could have applied for your opportunity, and you've just taken them off the board. And that's one of the things that we want to be able to do is open that funnel and provide those opportunities for people to have a chance and really expand economic opportunity. Because if they don't have the chance to go for, let's say, living wage related roles, they're never going to be able to transform that career. So we need to do this, and it's a whole, not just the employers, not just our universities, not just our training organizations. It's going to take a village. And like I said, I love 110 and what they're doing and challenging many of the employer communities to say, you need to look at this talent differently.
Absolutely.
And one thing, we love all of our university partners. But Roy, since you brought up the HBCUs, I have to do a shout out to Florida A&M and Dr. Bill Means. I'm not sure if he's on this, but FAMU literally last week just sent out an announcement to all of its employer partners, letting them know about FAMU's micro internship program, because they're hearing from employers all the time that are trying to do more recruiting there. But students either haven't heard of the brand or have preconceived notions, or they're engaging with people that don't come from similar backgrounds. And FAMU is doing this incredible program. And yes, we are proud to partner with them on that. But where there's a foundation who's actually funding these micro internships to make sure that the students are getting paid, and helping the companies start to build those relationships. Because to something Sean said, it needs to be authentic and organic. Asking your ERG members to go just sit on the panel when everyone who the student's interviewing with doesn't look like students see through that. And there's no ERG for bald guys like me and Sean.
And soon to be Roy.
But Jeff, you're right that students do see through that. And the research for my book, I remember speaking with the Career Center folks at George Washington University, and they said the students were proactively asking for DEI statistics about the companies before they apply. They want to know what's going on at that company, the culture, the flexibility, the diversity, before they're even submitting their resume for consideration. And so companies need to have their DEI strategy ready. And I believe about 60% of companies do, but that 30% that don't, prioritize that for 2023.
Yeah, and I just put a comment in the chat too, is if you look at your population, let's say you do have a small population of, let's say, the traditionally diverse populations, you could burn out your staff really quick if they have to be on every single committee and be in everything to be able to do that. So you have to also understand is how do I support them? Because this is going to take a village and it's going to take some time. And also looking at leadership, and does your leadership actually represent that as well?
Yeah, it needs to be authentic and organic, and we're seeing some neat programs engaging ERGs in ways that are, again, sustainable, and it's driving not only better campus recruiting but also higher retention of members of the ERG because they feel truly included. So we have a whole bunch of questions I want to make sure we have time for. First, I'm going to start one. We got a question from beforehand. What are some effective strategies for recruiting diverse candidates from underrepresented communities? What are better retention support strategies to support them when hired? I'll make it a jump ball, so whoever wants to jump in.
I threw a couple of links in the chat here. One program that my company used for a couple of summers was called Inroads. And so Inroads will help with the sourcing of interns from HBCUs, actually, and they support you in the interview process. They bring fantastic candidates. I had one for almost a year, actually, and she did great picking up technical skills. We gave her the training, right? She came in with the energy and the motivation to work with us, and we trained her in a particular technology. She embraced it and ran with it. On the support side, I think it's really important to make sure not only do you have like the alignment to a manager and a team, but we also overlay a mentor and a buddy system. So you're getting exposed to different people, different teams. We make sure every intern does an executive presentation at the end of their internship, and we're prepping them for that executive presentation, which also helps them then articulate the value of the project that they did for the company, and in explaining that in future interviews and scenarios. So I think that wraparound support is super important, and it really leaves an impression on these young people. Any
other suggestions, Roy and Sean?
Yeah, I mean, that's a full court press. Absolutely. That whole wraparound, I love that word that you used, is yes, similar to that. Other organizations such as Inroads, we have high, population of engineers. So all those engineering organizations I was mentioning, but any other organizations that are out there. And I think the key that what we're trying to do moving forward is not just go during a recruitment time, but are you providing those interview workshops? Are you providing those resume workshops? And so trying to have more investment. So we're going back to our HBCUs in the spring for their career fairs, but I'm challenging the teams to figure out how we can invest more than beyond just showing up that day, right? Bringing our alumni, those 2 HBCU students I talked about, let's take them to the campus with us when we go, right? They get to go back home, to their alma mater, and there's ways to engage in that form. And then to the point of making sure they're supported, if your company does have, those EBRGs, or if you're able to create those, and allow your employees to be able to join those. Love the mentorship part. That was a big part of what we did in the summer with our interns, is when we introduced them to those Black employees at Spirit, it wasn't just to have the one moment, it was a connection point for beyond. There was one student who's still with the company and started, I think, in the summer of 2021 as an intern, came back full time. And when we had that event, she mentioned, oh my gosh, I've been struggling. And like, she met sorority sisters at that event. She figured out where to go get her hair done. I mean, it was just so amazing to see that in real time. And that connection has continued. And I reach out often just saying, hey, how's everything going? Oh, it's still going well. It's still going great. And so I think that wraparound you said, just trying to make sure that they feel supported, being intentional about it, being real about it. Because as you said, I talk to so many students and they can see through it. They can see through any facade or anything that you might be trying to do. And so you really do have to walk that talk. And although Spirit's not perfect, the leadership here is trying to move in that direction through our sustainability report that we have to put out every single year. And that's, public. So, interns can go out and look at that. Employees can go out and look at that and see what the targets are for women, what the targets are for ethnically diverse employees, and how we're matching up to that. So even when it's talking about green, our Wichita site is run on energy from a wind farm, and so those are different things that, we really have to try to make sure we're promoting, but those are some things I can offer.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I'll jump in. I mean, the reality is micro internships are an incredibly effective way, whether you do them through us or in general, to engage diverse students, not just at the HBCUs and HSIs and other MSIs, but students from all backgrounds across whether it's traditional four-year community college, boot camps, et cetera, because it helps those students get the foot in the door. But what it also starts to do is break down those unintentional biases of hiring managers. That hiring manager that still only wants to interview from a certain GPA or school or major, how can you give them exposure to students from different backgrounds and see them in action? Again, all great ideas. We got a question.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Sean, were you going to add
No,
something?
I was just going to add to is look at your local community and your universities that are in that community, as well as your, whether you have a county conference or a technical like council, tech council, or chamber of commerce. They also have lists of all of these different organizations, nonprofits, advocates, boot camp. They'll be able to help connect you to some of those areas as well, especially if you're recruiting regionally. So that was one thing to mention too.
And I just want to scare the employers on the line for a second. I met an employer who has an MBA summer internship program. They recruit from 2 high-profile Ivy League schools. They filled 0 of those roles this fall in their on-campus recruiting. The students don't want to work in a large traditional firm anymore. They want to go work for startups. And so if you are recruiting from 1 or 2 or 3 schools, diversify, because you don't want to be that recruiter who does not fill those roles because the students are interested in other companies. So use this opportunity to do that. Like, take advantage of the hybrid recruiting opportunity to get out there and meet more students.
Yeah, and something too, and I am plugging for Spirit, but I think it's something that can be helpful for a lot of other employers. And that is learn how to, on the similar way that we were talking about how we're trying to have students learn how to tell their stories and brand themselves. Learn how to brand your company and what your company has to offer. And I don't just mean in a high scale of like, oh, we design, large aerostructures, but there's so many different areas within Spirit Aerosystems, different products, whether it's in defense or commercial, and so learn how to tell that story, because what I'm finding is when I'm pitching the company to candidates, students that we're trying to hire, like you're saying, going to the campuses, it's like, oh, I can have some sort of like entrepreneurship, within this company because we're working on this technology or hypersonics. Artemis that's going to the moon right now has, as an escape abort system that was produced by Spirit. So like all these different things, but if you don't tell that story, then it can look like that traditional student, right? And a lot of companies have these different stories. So not just Spirit, but if you're an employer out there, really try to figure out how you go back and remarket all of the different opportunities. Because once I get through with it, and I got all this energy, but once I get through with the presentation, there's students like, wow, well, I would like to be in this group, or I would like to be in that. I mean, one of our interns, her project was to design a rocket to test a certain sensor, and she made the CEO's blog. It was the whole thing, and we were just like, what? I didn't even know that was going on here at Spirit Aerosystems. So it's telling that story is so important.
And that goes back to employer branding. Employer branding is things like, again, having college students preconceived notions that Spirit is just for engineering students and not realize that there's roles in finance or HR. Xylem, a company we work with all the time, talks about their Fortune 500 that college students haven't heard of, or they think manufacturing and they don't realize the environmental impact. How do you build that brand? But also, as a quick reminder from the beginning of the session, make sure you pay your interns and don't have unpaid internships, because that's a pretty quick way to destroy your brand. One other quick question before we start to wrap that came from the audience. What can career services do to help their students who belong to minority groups find internships and jobs and be recognized? And again, I'm going to hit this one first because William from FAMU is on the call. Thank you so much. I think the work FAMU is doing is incredible, but would love to hear from the rest of the panel on that. So what can career services staffs do to help the students and help the employers better achieve their diversity goals?
So I'm gonna plug Carnegie Mellon University for the traditional college students. I think their team has done an amazing job at creating a diverse student webpage on their career services, so that shows all of the different diversity groups that are on campus, as well as other groups that are there, and then providing that for students to see, as well as they have an employer page as well that are looking to recruit diverse students. The other thing is, as career services, you need to adequately be a guide for your employers. You are not the hero of the story. Your employer is, or your student is. You're there to help them, and they don't know your campus. Even if they're an alum, it might be an alum from years ago. You need to help them. That's the huge value you bring in, that you are a consultant to them on your campus. So really work with them. And also, I'm going to be honest, if you're working with an employer and you know it's not a great match, be open and willing to say why it's not a great match, and be able to do that, because especially at some of these very competitive schools, you're going to get into the place where you realize they're just not going to stand out with university, and you don't want to waste their time. Now, granted, it's up to them to continue to hire, but you need to adequately represent and connect them in any ways that you possibly can, because they're trusting you. So that's what I would say.
I like Sean's point about democratizing access to the information, right? Having a page for the employers to understand the student life that's available, that's available to the students and available to them, right? But at the same time, the students also need access to the demographic information, like the employment reports that these employers are publishing, so that they can make their own informed decision.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to that, from the employer side of perspective, prepare. Career services, thank you to every career service team member who might be on the call right now, who is spending that time to prepare. And I say that because I don't know how many calls that I will personally have with a student from a ethnically diverse background, because it's my story. So I'll reach out to them and I'll say, can you just walk me through your resume? I can't make an unfair advantage, right? Because we can't do that in HR. But can you walk me through this resume? And oftentimes I will find that they have so much more knowledge, so much more experience than what they have actually placed on that resume or in that application. And so the more coaching, like a Thrive DX, provides, the more coaching that a student, especially from a diverse background, ethnically diverse background, where maybe it's their first generation or just not knowing how to tell their story. I'm telling you, I will finish those calls. I tell the student, I can't guarantee you an internship. I can't do the interview for you. But here are some things that you might consider that I didn't tell you to say. You told me by walking me through your resume. I'll leave, that's it. I'm done talking with that student. 2 weeks later, hey, I got the internship. And it's like, because they were able to tell their story, and I wasn't a part of interviewing them or anything. And so I think that is something I've just seen over and over and over again, is if you can get that student to understand what value they're bringing to the table and how to communicate that value. Asha has it well put in her book. I think that to me is golden, especially for ethnically diverse. That's my story.
And by the way, there was a question that we don't really have time for, sorry, that was coming about what certification should students have to demonstrate those skills. And again, one of the things that was interesting that you said, Roy, was it's about the resume. It's not necessarily about someone having a certification, but if a student can actually talk about a real experience where they demonstrated teamwork or problem solving or attention to detail, even better. We have 1 minute left. So very quickly, what is the one piece of advice that you would have to the participants on the call, sort of takeaway action item, something they could do? Asha, we'll start with you. We'll go alphabetical.
All right. Practice open-mindedness to bring best talents into your organizations.
Awesome. I would say, make sure you cultivate, provide that culture and that support, especially for your, ethnically diverse employees. If that's something you're wanting to grow, be realistic about that, be intentional about that.
Yeah.
Sean.
So for employers, think differently about your roles, pathways, target, students you're looking for and your process. For career services, be strategic with connecting employers. And for learners, they just need to focus on, remember to smile, which is strengths, motivation, interest, likability, and energy. That'd be my last bit.
Oh, we didn't get to the question where we got to use smile. I'm sorry,
cool.
Sean. We'll share it after. That is awesome. So the SMILE acronym, phenomenal. I'm going to lead with one. Think about all of those little projects you have on your own plate or members of your team have on your plate. There are millions, literally millions of college students, boot camp students, recent grads who would be excited to work on those projects for you. Give them the opportunity. Those are perfect micro internships. It's a great way to see the skills in action. It's a great way to ensure equitable pathways into those roles, to break down some of those barriers. Thank you so much, Asha, Roy, Sean, and everyone else who joined. I could talk to you all for hours. This was great. I learned a ton. Thank you. Thank you again to everyone. We'll share the recording afterwards. I saw Go Hoosiers. Yeah, after the way we played at Rutgers, I'm not so sure. No, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday season. If you have additional questions, I know Asha, Sean, and Roy would all be happy to chat more offline. We'll send around details after. With that, this concludes the webinar.
Thanks, everybody.